this evening, and it should be very eventful. I hope that what I present to you tonight will give you an insight to some of the ideas Nikola Tesla had brought about. I'm an independent garage explorer. My name is Michael Lease. I've been doing this type of research for close to 20 years now. Got inspired with crystal radios a long time ago. My dad gave me a broadband radio, kind of thought it was really cool to dial in and hear the sounds. So the main theme tonight is Nikola Tesla's electric universe. And this information underneath this is a natural regenerative energy system. We're all searching for that patterning of energy. And in the process of my research, I ended up finding a lot of different things that gave me evidence that's a real reality that we can do to transform our magnetic electric fields. Nikola Tesla, the master of lightning. If anybody has seen some of the old footage or even read some of his books, he knew how to cast a lightning bolt. And tonight I'm not doing that type of stuff because in the reading of his information, he was trying to tame that and bring it down to a usable process. It wasn't about just throwing lightning. So when you're seeing people out there doing large Tesla coils, that's great. It's great for display. I have read something at one time that they mentioned that Tesla coils were nothing more than just a fantasy of Tesla. That's not true. That's not true. He used it as an instrument and part of a system that he was building. Let there be light. Where we are today without Tesla, we'd be still burning candles. So talk about CO2 or what everybody's worried about, we'd be still having whale blubber and some of that type of stuff. He harnessed electricity. There were a lot of things going on at that time, 100 years plus ago. Michael Faraday found that if you move a magnet in front of a coil of wire, it moved the electron. And from that, so many other things developed out. Tesla took that idea. Faraday was one of his idols. And Tesla took that idea in his own inspiration. He was the thinker. I'm trying to emulate or think and follow what the masters are doing or have done, because I believe every one of us, if we truly want to learn something, learn what those have already done it and try to replicate what they did, but in your own variable of that same thing. So tonight what I'm trying to present to you is this idea Tesla first had. We live in an electric sea of energy, and he thought of the idea of the earth as part of the grounding of his Wardenclyffe Tower, and he developed a lot of things when he was in Colorado. With that inventive mind, he brought through the information on how to change or transform electricity. At that time we had, I'm sure that some people have seen some of the movie, the Edison and Tesla, the War of the Currents. I haven't seen it yet myself, but in my understanding, at that time, Edison had DC, so everything was running on direct current. Tesla knew of DC because really AC is chopped DC. It's a directional, DC is directional current, AC is alternating. Inside his lab, he was in the quietude of his own mind, his own ideas. He produced some things that yet to this day, people are still trying to understand what he was doing with resonance. Resonance, harmonics, frequencies, Tesla coils function on those concepts. It's all patterning of how energy functions. So to tie this back into, like my wife says, sometimes they get carried away in the ideas. They got to tie it back to the self. So why did I get into this? I needed to learn about healing myself. So in the process of learning about energy through understanding frequency and harmonics and different in-phase, out-of-phase condition that magnetism and electricity present, it taught me what I was about inside myself. So in his Colorado workshop, I'm sure you've heard some of the stories, there's where people were seeing some of the lightning bolts. He blew out the power station in Colorado Springs. When horses were walking, they would have, because they had the horseshoes on them, there was static charges that when they were walking, you would see electricity jump from their shoes down to the ground. So he was trying to tame that. We see it as natural power. Every one of us, we've experienced it. Electricity is there in the universe for every one of us. We feel it, even in our own heartbeat. Even though we see it as a calming effect and all these things, we don't realize that it's the very functioning process of what we are today. Can we harness this force? It's going to take some bright minds and people who are aware not only of the dangers, because you can see what Mother Nature in and of herself can do, but it also takes that concept of spirituality, because technology without the mind or without the spiritual input of ideas, all you're going to do is create more havoc on the planet. We see what those things unleashed to mankind can do. You look at the atomic bomb, the idea of energy transferring to mass and all that type of stuff that was there. Tesla was against that idea of splitting the atom. And I think today, we are at a crux point to understand a new physics, a new idea of how this process of electricity and magnetism works, not only outside of ourselves, but inside of ourselves as an interdimensional form of existence. This is not child's play. This is the real stuff. When we're talking about UFOs and what's here and the different process of healing of the spirit, which really heals the body, you have to learn to develop into understanding the high frequency, which is spirit. The ancients called it spiritos, which was high frequency electricity. So what does that mean? Let me go back to this. The vision, the mystery, the past, present, future. I believe even in electricity, you have points of interaction, positive, negative, past, present, future. So when I started this presentation, that's already my past. I am in the moment. And this is where all interaction takes place. I know there's things to come in the future. That is a principle of energy. And once we understand that, we can get beyond time and space. But until we understand that and understand how these things they're deep physics equations, but really every one of us already has it within us. When you breathe and you breathe in, you breathe out, your heart functions in a normal rhythm. That idea is already inherent within the process of man. All we need to do is learn what's really going on. Stop, look, and listen. That's all I've been trying to do. Shocked a few times, almost knocked myself out a few times. My wife is saying, what blew, or what's that sound in the garage? Oh, I just discharged the capacitor, sorry about that. Free energy, the Wardenclyffe Tower, and wireless power. There's a lot of mystery about all that. I do believe that there is free energy. Somebody came to the booth earlier and asked me about it, and I mentioned to them, it's everywhere, it's already here. We're already in it. You can do what you want. You can get up and start running really fast. Where'd you get that energy? That was free. So really, what do we want to do? Let's bring this to the philosophical equation that as a society, what do we want to do? It's not about having energy. Energy is unlimited. We do need electricity, but you have to transform all that to build a better society. So who has the vision without just wanting to run the bankroll? We have to also build the process that's part of the development of our own society. So there's an idea that had gone around that Tesla had a Pierce Arrow. That was an electric car that was able to drive at like 90 miles an hour. There's a few bits of information that it's true. Some of it may not be true. But I do know, I have a book, I should have brought it with me this evening, but it was a patent trial where Tesla talks about this Wardenclyffe Tower. Right now, that has been repurchased by the Tesla Society up in Long Island, where they actually saved that from demolition. They're going to turn it into a museum. And it's been in process. There's a lot, you can go and search about it. But at that tower, Tesla in the patent trial and all the things were there. He said he did run that, but he didn't have the money to keep it running. He did a lot of experiments with it. Speculation is he had the device that fit in the car that received the frequency vibration from that car through the antenna that demodulated down the energy that ran into whether a storage capacitor or batteries through that induction of the radiant field back down to a usable current to be able to run the wheels. So if that's true, then we are 100 years late on trying to get electric vehicles. We could be there. At the time, Standard Oil was one of the bigger people fighting against because we had a means and method. Still to this day, gasoline is the biggest bang for your buck to be able to get you somewhere. We haven't really learned how to harness the other forces. So how can we fulfill the dream? It's not just about Tesla. You gotta remember there's a lot of other people that came around. There were a lot of other things that were going on. He was not alone, but he became shunned by society because some of his outlandish ideas, even wireless electricity, was not really understood. He was on the cusp of understanding what it was, and before he could actually explain what he was finding, they almost pulled the plug on everything and said, we need to put the meter on what's just being running on the wires. That's kind of the battle that's been going on. Westinghouse was very instrumental in bringing about Tesla's idea to the world in the alternating motor and the generator. Alternating current, when Tesla harnessed the process of the Niagara Falls, and they built that power station there, and he was able to transmit electricity to, I believe it was the World's Fair at the time in Chicago or wherever it was at that moment, and he was able to light the place up with AC. That put him on the map. That put you and I on the map, what we have today. Not a lot of people give Tesla the credit of what he was really due in the building of our society. If you go and you read and you're an electrical engineer, not much is mentioned about Tesla. About 9 years back, I went and got my ham radio operator's license, just because I needed to know more. And I'm not schooled in any engineering. I am a dropout from college. I don't have a degree. This is all just hands-on experiments and a lot of reading, a lot of studying, and a lot of trial and error. Throwing away a lot of stuff because it didn't work. But in the process of finding out, Tesla's kind of taboo in the world, because even in ham radio, talk to some of the guys and Tesla, he didn't know anything. But they don't realize that Tesla was really the basis of why you now have radio. In the course of the whole, what I brought up about the trial, it was a trial against Marconi. Everybody knows that supposedly Marconi sent the first signal across the Atlantic. Marconi was the originator of radio. Not realizing, like what I'm doing today, Marconi was sitting in the audience of Tesla's presentation while Tesla ran the coils and did what he did to show wireless electricity or whatever it may be. Went home, designed his own ideas, conceptualization, just like what I was doing, and claimed to be the originator because he did beat Tesla to the punch on dropping that S or whatever it was that picked up the signal across the Atlantic. That is true. But Tesla had the concept, he learned the concept from Tesla. History doesn't really tell you that. At least today, it's starting to come out. Tesla died before they reversed the idea that he was the originator of radio. So fulfilling the dream. Part of this whole idea is the science of energy. It is a science, and we're going to need to learn that if we do want to advance in our societies. At least that's my belief. Electricity, magnetism, the vortex, frequency, harmonics, oscillations, sine wave, and cyclic motion. They all interact with each other. You can't have one without the other because all function in some relative relationship to each other. The pattern emerges, the atomic field. We are all standing on that field. We feel it is hard, but it is not. It's an oscillation of a vibration at a particular rate that our body cannot pass through, so to say. Masters like Jesus or other people could walk through walls. Why? Because they understood the process of transposition of their own system as a spirit, as an energy force. So in experimenting with Tesla coils, what I found that we as individuals have that same relationship. None of this could be done without understanding what's going on inside ourselves. We're a principle of energy, and how you think, what you do in your life, interrelates that process of that oscillation of that yin-yang sine wave vortex that you are. You're just receiving things through your eyes, your ears, your senses, but really it's feeding the information to your own inner higher self, if you want to call it. That is really where life exists, the inner kingdoms. So why do I bring this out? It's not scientific, it's all philosophy. No, it's not. Because if Mother Nature is that pattern, that universal spiral, and every person you'll see here in the course of slides has that pattern, means that we're all connected up to that interdimensional vortex. So why does that matter? Well, in the process of my own quest, I wanted to know. And that's why at the beginning I brought up this thing about a natural regenerative energy system. A sunflower, if you take one seed, drop it to the ground, water it, and grow it, it's going to replicate, it's going to regenerate its own design to another sunflowers or even more. So this one sunflower is going to go a field of sunflowers. If we understood that principle and using that concept in regenerating magnetism and electricity, there's your free energy all the time, anywhere, at any place. So what is it? What is that force? And when you look at the most efficient means and method that nature provides, it's that Fibonacci growth sequence, or the golden means, or the vortex. It's in a nautilus shell. It's everywhere if you just begin to look and see. So I took that idea, knowing that, yes, we're all born of starlight, and I started thinking about what can you do with that? You know, how do you do that? I thought, well, heck, let's shape it like Mother Nature's doing. This kind of goes through again the spiral of man. We are at the fulcrum. So in learning about that information, it now gave me the seed or the idea to apply to a system. And so tonight what I wanted to show you is there's, sitting on the bench here, there's a gear that's developed. And I don't have the small one, I already packed it away for the times, but it's a 6-axis gear. And that gear is based on that Fibonacci design. There's a vortex above it. Let me get through a few of these and then we'll jump across to a few of those things. But the human aura, the magnetic biofield, there's all things are going on inside of us. And I'm sure people want to see what's happening here. So I'm just kind of trying to at least expose you to this. Because without this knowledge of knowing, this is of non-use. Okay? We have to have both. And we've lost that in our educational values or even in our systems. We're not understanding that it's a symbiotic relationship between body, mind, and spirit and in the society. You know, how do you feed the masses, so to say? What do you do? We're at a quandary. You got to remember, years ago, there wasn't as many people. Now there's this amount of people. So what do we do? So we have to be thinkers. I'm trying to inspire and say, hey, this is something we can work with. So the creative principles and laws of science. Again, it comes down to taking that information and applying it to a structure. These are some of the books that I researched into. A man named Ernest Norman. He was the founder of the United States Academy of Science. And some of you may know him or not, but in some of the real hardcore research beyond, I broke away from what they're doing and delved deep into his ideas. From that, I built that gear. So a lot of people have looked at it, and there's been a lot of controversy on what has come and gone, but the works that man had brought through is unknown. This is something that was out of that book. We cannot deny the existence of great spiritual worlds beyond this third dimension. In fact, any form of substance, even the existence of man himself, would be but a hollow mockery, a useless and unintelligent freak of happenstance, unless there were such great worlds beyond this. Like all things large or small, the earth and all its creatures have been created from this sublime spiritual stuff. Each thing, though it may appear different, is a highly developed, organized systems of tiny solar systems of energy, and in turn claim as their parent the very substance of the infinite mind. There's your free energy. There's your electricity. How do you tap that? Mimic Mother Nature. The only answer I've ever been able to find. That's Ernest Norman himself. I truly believe he was an advanced being, just like Tesla. And if you look at, I have to go back to it, but I had a picture of Leonardo da Vinci at the beginning with the flying machine that Leonardo thought about. Nikola Tesla, I believe, could have been the reincarnation of Leonardo da Vinci. He was into wanting to fly. Similar ideas. So we all transmigrate through time and space to evolve, not only on this planet, but through other realms of existence. We learn from those realms of existence, bring back to this world to try to help mankind who are struggling along in the ideas. That's some of the concept that Ernest Norman brought through. Again, that's a pattern of that movement of the sine wave, which helped me understand how Tesla coils helped me learn to understand that there's a movement of that sine wave. Life and death is the movement of the sine wave. The in and out breathing is the movement of that sine wave. That's his wife, Ruth Norman. Fascinating information. It's a hard delve into it. Buckminster Fuller, another one who found the same pattern. Synergetics, name for geometry advanced based on the pattern of energy you saw in nature. Buckminster Fuller Institute. Geodesic dome, a natural pattern. So I'm trying to draw you into the point of what's going on, okay? So I took those ideas of that spiral and that vortex, and I had two cones that were basically funnels that I bought at the Home Depot. Duct tape magnets onto them in a spiral. Why? Because that's what I felt was, okay, well, Mother Nature, let's try this. It didn't work. Let's try it again. So I taped them on there again, tried to do 3 spirals. 1, 2, 3. They were all positive orientated where the positive magnets were on there. Tried to put them in the next one. Didn't work. So after numerous trials and errors, I found that if they were in the pattern, again, I had lost sight that there's a pattern in the universe. In one of Dr. Norman's books, he talks about how NASA transposed or found that there are arms of energy that come off the sun. Positive, negative, positive, negative. There's 4 arms when you really delve into it. It's saying that Fibonacci spiral. So I took that idea, positive, negative, on those 2 cones, and voila, I got spin. I got 2 of them to spin. So once I figured that, it delved me deeper that I felt that I was on a track of something. That magnetism could be shaped. And right now we see in our own ideas of what the school teaches you. There's another guy, Howard Johnson, I don't know how many of you ever heard of him. He brought out a theory, there's a double polarity vortex in a magnet. I 100% believe he was right. We do not know that today in our schooling. He's kind of a lost treasure, passed away I think in like 2008 or something. But he stated that there was a vortex within the magnet. There's not much writings about him, but he did map the magnetic fields. That helped me so much because once I theorized and said somebody else has got to find the same thing, he was one that helped me find that similar idea. There is that force. Again, bringing out this whole idea of the vortex. We can't miss it. It's right in front of us. So electricity brings us to the Tesla coils. So the moment I think everybody's been trying to say, okay, so what really is going on? So to bring it down, and I'm going to step off here just so you can see, This is what I developed over the course of time. I had two of these that were two cones that I put the magnets around, and I finally got those two to work. I figured that, well, heck, if two can work, then I can do four. So I made all four of them exactly the same, not realizing there's another pattern. If we go back to the idea of the sunflower, there's a clockwise spiral, there's a counterclockwise spiral. Oh, why didn't I know that from the beginning, where I spent so much time trying to get the thing to work? Not realizing, follow the pattern. So once I followed the pattern, I got the 4 to work, not realizing, oh, you can get 6 to work. You can't do it with a mechanical gear, but you can do it with magnetic field. So to run this, let me shut this off so you can kind of see some of the ideas. A little bit of a spin, a run up. Right now we're taking electricity. It has a pulse coil that drives magnets. So everybody knows that a positive field and a positive field repel. A positive field and a negative field attract. So I'm using those ideas. I have positive coils pushing the vortex at the top, driving them at a consistent pattern of, there's a little electronic eye that tells when that coil should turn on and off. So by seeing that, I found that I could turn those 2 coils on and drive the 4 outer coils. Cones, I should say. So let me shut this down just for another moment, because the motor's off. It's running on a 12-volt battery. It's not a perpetual motion machine. It's a theory of what could be possible. So when I started falling down the rabbit trail of saying, oh, there's something here, there's something going on, I have a theory now that leads me to the next stage. This worked. Okay? So by building the motor, I now have a motor generator. The outer coils that are around this are the generator. And in a moment I'll show that there's enough electricity to run this Tesla coil, which then you can kind of see some of Tesla's ideas, where you have a single wire with no return. So this comes out in the Wardenclyffe Tower. He had taken that tower, grounded it to the earth. If you look in some of his drawings, he did other experiments other than just grounding it. So I followed that experiment, kind of reversed it back, took a single wire off the base, which normally goes to ground. And so he theorized that on another part of the planet, you could dip a ground rod into the ground, which this is my ground, and you could have electricity run. This is a single wire, no return. Okay? In our electrical grid right now, we have a common, a hot, and a ground. So one goes out and one comes back. Supposedly the load is somewhere in between. So we have processes of where we're trapped in our electrical grid because we have fires that happen because the wires spark and all these type of things. Well, if we were to do something and use a ground current and or take it to an even higher level of understanding, is to take what comes off as a Tesla coil, turn it into a laser or a beam of light, run that to another demodulating step-down transformer. You now have no wires. Wind can blow all it wants. It doesn't even matter. But you're transferring it through the ether of space, which they have cast out and said the ether does not exist. Supposedly it's not there. We live in a sea of energy. There is a medium between you and I. It has to be there for the vibration of my voice to travel along a wavelength of energy, so in your earlobes you can pick that up. We've developed that process to say, okay, now I can hear you, but not realizing the principle or the physics that goes behind that. It's deep. We're moving that energy. That's what evolution has taught us. So let me turn this back on, run it up. The theory that, and the thing that I found in the course of this, let's bring it to what's going on in today's world, is we're at a process to where if we don't use electricity, it's lost. They generate it, you either have to store it or use it. Because if you don't store it, you can't use it at a later time, because it's an instantaneous motion of that movement of that electron, okay? They're starting to develop flywheel systems. In my research of flywheels, what I found is that this is my flywheel. Flywheels have a problem, it's like a gyroscope, where once they're up and running, everybody's felt the gyroscope, you can't turn it because it always wants to stand up. Well, I found in this system that you can take this and turn it on any axis that you want. It cancels out the gyroscopic effect. Why is that important? You can now put a flywheel on a moving platform and it doesn't matter. Before, trying to put a flywheel on a car, if you want to turn left, it always wants to go right because you're trying to stand up. Those are the forces of nature that we are needing to learn to understand. The gyroscopic, gravitational pulls, whatever you want to call it, is really the centrifugal force of the influx of that vortex, and you have the centripetal, which is the outkick of that vortex. There's your vortex idea, and that's the deal. So now that the system's running, there's enough power that's generated from the magnets that are going by the coils, gives me close to 110 coming out of those coils, which is now running into this Tesla coil, which is a transformer. It's taking that electricity and stepping it up to high voltage, high frequency, low amperage. When I turn on the switch, you can see over here on the far end, single wire with no return, lights the motor, turns on this system, and then you can also see this one got bumped on the way through. We have a wireless light. So what it states is that I have now energized the field. It's called the near field, which is in electronics. So there's a certain point that this is radiant to. But it's the reality of what Tesla was trying to do. So you notice when I moved this out of there, this was the slave that was drawing the energy. It's a principle. They'll probably shut it off. Well, they got to become in resonance. So everything has to be in resonance. This is part of what I learned and developed over many, many hours of trying to get this to run. The Tesla coils that I've seen that are around, so it shows that the single wire is electric everywhere. So in a small experiment in my garage, what I found is that you can charge a cell phone walking around with this. But what you have to do, you've got to be able to put the